Voiceover. There is a unique form of paralysis that seizes the human soul. It's not the fear of failure, nor the hesitation of uncertainty. It is the cold, quiet dread of the impossible choice. A moment when the path forks, and both directions lead over a cliff. We call this silent agony the pariah's paradox. The burden of being forced to make a decision where every outcome makes you a monster in someone's eyes, perhaps even your own. You have been trapped there. We all have. In those moments, the weight of the world condenses into a single point, pressing down on your conscience until it threatens to shatter. But what if I told you that within this very paralysis lies a key? A brutal, unforgiving key to understanding not just how to act, but how to survive when morality itself becomes a weapon pointed at your head. By the end of this analysis, you will not have an easy answer. Easy answers are for children and fools. Instead, you will have a framework, a strategist's guide for navigating the damnedest choices life can throw at you, forged in the crucible of the greatest ethical cataclysm ever imagined. Voiceover. You know the feeling. It starts in your gut, a knot of ice. Your mind races, calculating and recalculating, searching for a third option, a hidden escape hatch that isn't there. The world, which once seemed a landscape of possibilities, shrinks to the size of a cage. And you are the one who must choose which wall to bloody your hands against. You feel the eyes of others on you. They judge, they advise, they condemn. But they are outside the cage. They cannot feel the cold steel of the bars or the suffocating air. They speak of right and wrong, as if they are fixed points on a map, not realizing that your map has been set on fire. A simple, grounded visual appears, two hands clasped in friendship. Then, one hand pulls away, leaving the other grasping at air. Think of a simpler time. You discover a secret that could shatter a friend's happiness, a betrayal by their partner, a lie at the heart of their life. Your choice is a blade with two edges. Do you speak the truth and become the agent of their pain, potentially destroying your friendship in the process? Or do you remain silent, becoming a co-conspirator in the deceit, watching your friend live a lie while a part of you rots with the knowledge? Both paths lead to loss. Both paths assign you a role you do not want, the bringer of sorrow, or the silent accomplice. The world demands a choice, and then condemns you for making it. This is the agitation of the pariah's paradox. The hidden cost is not just a bad outcome. The true price is the erosion of the self. As you stand frozen at that crossroads, you are not just deciding on an action. You are deciding which version of yourself to betray. And with every moment of inaction, you choose a third path. The path of the coward, who lets fate or others make the choice for them. This, too, is a damnation. You don't just lose a friend or your integrity. You lose faith in your own agency. You begin to believe you are nothing more than a pawn in a cruel game. And this is the most dangerous battlefield of all. The one inside your own mind. The screen goes black. Then, a single, terrifying image fades in. The silhouette of a colossal, steaming titan, its eyes glowing with malevolent purpose. The music shifts to a grand, tragic, and terrifying theme. Voiceover. To understand how to break this paralysis, we must turn from the mundane to the monumental. We must study the case of a man who was handed not just an impossible choice, but an impossible world. A man who stared into the abyss of the pariah's paradox and, instead of flinching, forced the abyss to stare back. His name is Eren Yeager. His situation was absolute. His people, the Eldians of Parody Island, were caged. Hated by a world that saw them as devils, they were sentenced to a slow, inevitable extinction. Every diplomatic overture was met with contempt. Every plea for peace was answered with the promise of annihilation. The world had already decided their fate. Eren was presented with two primary paths, each a different flavor of hell. Path 1. The euthanasia plan. Sterilize his own people. A quiet, managed suicide of an entire race, allowing them to die out peacefully over a generation. This was the moral choice offered by his enemies, a surrender disguised as mercy. Path 2. A limited, targeted strike. Use a fraction of his power to cripple the world's military forces, buying his people a few more decades of precarious life. A half measure. A delay of the inevitable, ensuring his own children would inherit the same cursed war. This is the anatomy of a perfect trap. One choice is self-destruction. The other is to pass the death sentence to the next generation. For Eren, conventional ethics had collapsed. When your very existence is defined as a crime by the rest of the world, the rules of that world no longer apply. This is the first principle of navigating the impossible choice, the collapse of conventional ethics. The language of peacetime, dialogue, compromise, universal rights, becomes a cruel joke when one side's objective is the other's complete erasure. To cling to those ethics is to willingly place your head in the noose and thank the executioner for the rope. So, what is left when the old maps are useless? You are left with a compass that points to a single, unshakable truth. This is the second principle, the primacy of the core value. You must ask yourself, in this maelstrom of destruction, what is the one thing I am fundamentally, absolutely unwilling to sacrifice? For Eren, it wasn't his own life, his own morality, or his own soul. It was the future of his friends. He wanted them to live long, full lives, free from the cage he was born into. This became his true north. Every choice, no matter how monstrous, would be judged against a single criterion. Does it lead to their freedom? This clarity of purpose leads to the third, and most terrible, principle, the acceptance of monstrosity. By choosing his core value, Eren saw the only path forward. A path that wasn't on the map. A third option, so horrific it was unthinkable to anyone else. To save the few he loved, he would have to destroy the many he did not. He would unleash the rumbling. He would trample 80% of the global population into dust and blood. Stark, slow-motion visuals of the colossal titans marching. The scale is overwhelming. The sound is just the rhythmic, earth-shattering thud of their footsteps. To make this choice, he had to consciously abandon his own humanity. He had to accept that he would become the greatest monster history had ever known. He would be hated. He would be feared. He would be unforgivable. And he had to do it anyway, because the alternative, the sacrifice of his core value, was, to him, the only true sin. This is the brutal calculus of tragic necessity. Imagine a surgeon on a shattered battlefield. A soldier's leg is mangled, infected with a sepsis that is spreading by the second. In a clean, modern hospital, amputating that leg without proper anesthesia or tools would be an act of barbaric butchery. But on the battlefield, with death moments away, the saw and the desperate cut are not butchery. They are an act of salvation. The surgeon does not want to inflict that pain. He does not relish the screaming or the blood. He simply accepts the horrifying necessity of his task. He trades a limb for a life. Eren Yeager saw the world as the dying soldier, and humanity outside his walls as the gangrenous limb. His choice was to pick up the saw. # voiceover. This is not mere storytelling. It is a strategic doctrine. The principles of tragic necessity can be scaled down from the apocalyptic to the personal. They offer a framework for you to confront your own pariah's paradox, not to find an easy way out, but to find a way through. When you find yourself in the cage, do not panic. Do not thrash. You must become the strategist. You must execute the strategist's gambit for impossible choices. This is a 4-step protocol. 1. Define the cage. Take out a piece of paper, or open a document. Do not do this in your head. The mind is a hall of mirrors in a crisis. You must externalize the problem. Write down your options as they currently appear. Be brutally honest. Write down the worst-case scenario for each choice. Do not look for a secret door. Acknowledge the walls. Acknowledge the bars. See the trap for what it is. In military planning, this is called defining the battle space. You cannot win a war if you do not understand the terrain. By writing it down, you force clarity upon chaos. You tell yourself, yes, this is a no-win scenario. Now, let's strategize from that reality. 2. Identify your non-negotiable. This is the most critical step. You must now look at your life, your values, and your commitments, and decide what you will save from the fire. In a crisis, you cannot protect everything. The attempt to do so guarantees you will lose it all. What is your parity island? Is it your family's safety and stability? Is it your own professional integrity? Is it a lifelong creative project? Is it your mental health? Be specific and be ruthless. There can only be one primary objective. This is not about what you want to save. It is about what you must save, even if everything else burns. This will be your compass. It is the value that will justify the costs to come. 3. Calculate the cost of victory. Now, look back at your options from step 1. Which of them, however terrible, best serves your non-negotiable from step 2? Once you have identified it, you must calculate its price in blood, sweat, and tears. Do not sugarcoat it. If the choice involves ending a relationship, visualize that final, painful conversation. If it means financial ruin, look at the numbers. If it means sacrificing your reputation, imagine the whispers and the accusations. This is the process of wargaming, the consequences. A good commander does not just plan for victory, he plans for the cost of victory. You must look the horror of the outcome directly in the face and say, I accept this price. If you cannot, you must reconsider your non-negotiable. But if you can, you are ready for the final step. 4. Assume the mantle. Once the decision is made, you must act with absolute conviction. This is the hardest part, because it requires you to let go of something we all desperately crave: the approval of others. The people outside your cage will not understand your choice. They will call you selfish, cruel, or foolish. They will judge you based on their own map, their own peacetime ethics. You must allow them to. You must accept the role of the villain in their story to become the hero of your own. Hesitation at this stage is fatal. Second guessing is a form of self-sabotage. You have defined the cage, identified your objective, and accepted the cost. Now, you must march. You must become your own rumbling. This protocol will not make the choice painless. It will do the opposite. It will force you to feel the full weight of it. But it will also transform you from a paralyzed victim into a decisive agent. It gives you back the control that the paradox seeks to steal. ###. The scene shifts to historical footage. Black and white clips of cities in ruins. The solemn faces of wartime leaders. The mushroom cloud over Hiroshima. Voiceover. Does this brutal logic hold up beyond the world of fiction? History, written in ash and steel, screams that it does. The 20th century was a testament to leaders trapped in the pariah's paradox on a global scale. Consider the Allied strategic bombing campaigns of World War II. Men like Sir Arthur Harris of the Royal Air Force and General Curtis LeMay of the U.S. Army Air Forces were tasked with a singular, non-negotiable objective: the unconditional surrender of the Axis powers. They faced an enemy that had redefined barbarism. Conventional warfare was proving slow and catastrophically costly in human lives. So they made a decision. A choice born of tragic necessity. They would bring the war to the enemy's home front. They would firebomb cities like Dresden, Hamburg, and Tokyo, killing hundreds of thousands of civilians. They understood the cost. They knew history would brand them as butchers and war criminals. But their calculus was as grim and clear as Eren Yeager's. To them, the continuation of the war was a greater evil than the horrific means used to end it. They chose their non-negotiable, total victory and the end of the fascist threat. And they calculated the cost in human lives and their own souls. They assumed the mantle. Harris was unapologetic to his dying day, convinced he had saved more lives than he took by shortening the war. LeMay famously said, "If we'd lost the war, we'd all have been prosecuted as war criminals." This is the pure language of accepting monstrosity. Look to the father of the atomic bomb, J. Robert Oppenheimer. After witnessing the Trinity test, he famously recalled a line from the Bhagavad Gita: "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." This was not a boast. It was a lament. It was the sound of a man who understood he had solved an impossible problem by unleashing a power that would forever haunt humanity. He, too, was a surgeon on a battlefield, choosing a terrible, world-altering amputation to end a global cancer. The logic is terrifyingly sound. In a zero-sum game of survival, inaction is a choice. Refusing to become a monster to defeat a monster is simply a decision to let the other monster win. The moral purity of your own hands is a luxury you cannot afford when your back is against the wall. Eren understood this. The world would not stop trying to exterminate his people. To not act, To choose euthanasia or a half measure was simply to consent to his own destruction. His crime was not choosing to act, it was the scale on which he was forced to do so. The rumbling is not an argument for genocide. It is a terrifying illustration of what happens when a group is pushed so far into a corner that the logic of annihilation becomes the only logic that makes sense. Voiceover. The pariah's paradox is a fundamental part of the human condition. You will find yourself in that cage again. Life will ensure it. You will be faced with choices that offer no clean victory, only different degrees of loss. You will be judged by those who stand outside the walls of your dilemma. When that day comes, remember the grim lesson of the rumbling. Do not search for the right answer. There isn't one. Do not hope for a painless solution. It doesn't exist. Instead, seek clarity. Define the cage. Identify what you truly cannot afford to lose. Calculate the terrible cost of protecting it. And if you must, find the courage to assume the mantle and act, knowing you may be understood by no one but yourself. This is not about being right. It is about taking responsibility for a world that is imperfect and often cruel. It is the lonely, terrible burden of command, even if the only person you command is yourself. We are all defined by the choices we make when all the choices are bad. It is in those moments of impossible pressure that character is not merely revealed, but forged. Now, I want you to join the strategic discussion. Go to the comments and answer this. In your own life, when you faced an impossible choice, what was the non-negotiable you chose to protect, and what was the cost you had to pay? There is no judgment here, only shared experience from the front lines. The world is governed by cycles of conflict. History is a weapon, and understanding it is your armor. If you seek to look beyond the walls of conventional thinking, subscribe to this channel and join our ranks. We are the historians of the future war. Eren's decision was the final, cataclysmic outcome of a century of hatred and failure. To truly understand why he was forced into his cage, you must understand the man who locked the door. Watch our full strategic analysis next. The Sins of the Father. How Eren Yeager Doomed the World.